Yeah, I'm going to talk to you today about some experiences that I had in my previous role as an IT director, but probably like some of the other IT people in the room who were landed with security because it was about the closest to what you did rather than the fact that you actively wanted to look after cybersecurity. I'm sure we can all relate to us, getting into the industry that way. So yeah, this is a story about my worst ever day at work. So I worked in a really heavily regulated industry in the legal sector. It's not known for being the most secure industry in the world. And we were protecting client funds that were being transferred around during housing transactions, so lots of money involved. And I had a phone call from a really nervous junior who'd not been with the business long. And she said, "Jen, one of our clients has had an email from me and I didn't send it." So you can imagine at that time, heart-sinking moment, panic stations, all hands on deck. And we weren't prepared for that. So I want to share with you some of the lessons that I learned from having gone through a series of what are quite low-tech cyber attacks and things we hadn't really thought of. So, okay, first of all, why do I want to talk to you about that? So I'm seeing changing customer expectations and insurer expectations of our cybersecurity practices. So I used to be the person that received all of the supplier due diligence questionnaires that would say, how are you prepared for a cyber attack? What defenses do you have in place? Who do we contact if we think there's an issue? Actually now, those questionnaires are very much changing, and there seems to be an acceptance in the industry that actually we're all going to suffer a cyber attack. So it's now about how can we recover from it as opposed to how can we prevent it. So I'm now being asked questions about, when did you last review your business continuity plan? When have you last done an incident response test? How quickly can you recover should you have a cyber attack? So it's those kind of questions now that we're being asked more and more. So in my experience, where I've seen things go well and things not go so well, is in the communication. Communication is absolutely everything during a cyber attack. So understanding when to communicate and when not to communicate. So the first lesson I learned is you have to be really transparent with your inner circle. And when I say your inner circle, I'm talking about key staff within your business who can help with the situation. And I'm talking about the suppliers that you pay all this money to every year to support you with things like incident response and things like detection. Be transparent with those and agree a set of messaging early on that's very standard that you're going to put out to clients. You have to acknowledge there's a problem, but actually be really careful about what you communicate early on. Involve your marketing teams who can help you to craft that message. Okay, before you do anything else, so you've had the phone call, the "Jen, we've got a problem" phone call. Take out your business continuity and your disaster recovery plans. Now is a really bad time to realize that either you don't have them available offline, or you're not sure if they actually work. So if you're sat there now having never gone through a cyber incident thinking, we've never actually tested our plans, now is a really good time to do that. I'm quite often asked by clients, what's the difference? Why do we need both? In short, a business continuity plan is going to enable you to trade through a disaster. So yes, things are going to be different. You might look at alternative offices, you might look at manual processes. It's enough to keep the doors open and some business happening. Disaster recovery is very much about returning to normal, so you can't operate in a business continuity scenario for a long time. It's inefficient, and it's why we don't work like that every day. So it's all about returning to normal and make sure that those plans enable you to recover to normal business operations. Okay, step one, you need to identify the source of the compromise. So use your technical experts, whether they be in-house or part of your supply chain, and make available the logs. Look for any unusual behaviours. So if you had staff logging in from 2 countries at once, any unfamiliar IP addresses, and look at the alerts that have been generated by all these tools that I'm sure you buy and plug together as part of your business operations. At this point, don't communicate anything to the outside world while you're investigating, and stay open-minded. The first cyber incident that I went through was a really low-tech attack. So it was a case of a member of staff had used the same password for her Facebook account as she had for her work account. Wasn't a very good password. We didn't have MFA enabled. And the attacker had essentially guessed her password and was sending emails from her deleted folder in her email account. And we only found that because we looked at things like transport rules that had been put in place. So don't automatically assume that these are really complex attacks. Look at low tech. You have to assume the worst case scenario when you're trying to contain an attack. You have no idea at this point how far it's gone. So start worst case scenario and work backwards. Don't release any details at this point because actually you don't know if the person you're releasing details to is involved in the compromise. And sad as it is, we have to remember that insider threats are growing as an attack vector. So telling everybody in the business is a mistake at this point because you could be releasing additional information to the insider. So at this point, you're going to disable any accounts. You're going to try and prevent lateral movement. That's your objective at the contain phase. This part's really important because actually this helps you to access your recourse after the event. So if you don't have any expertise within the business at preserving evidence, get some, and it will be the best money you ever spend during an incident. So you have to adopt a crime scene mentality at this point. So photograph everything, document everything, make sure that you keep all of those logs and all of the evidence, and actually that's encrypted and secured and isn't being accessed by the wrong person. We then move into the recovery phase, and this is the part that you absolutely can't rush. So during the first cyber incident I was involved in, when I'd not done any of this stuff before, we rushed to recover, and actually we brought everything back online. We started communicating with our clients again, only to discover that we actually had a second account that had been compromised. So it's really important that you take your time with this part and check backups before you restore. Make sure that they're clean and actually you're not restoring to a compromised state. Keep monitoring unusual behaviors because, again, if this is an insider threat and you've now said, we're up and running again, that can still be an issue. And keep an eye out for any residual threats. And make sure, actually, I know this is a really obvious point, but I think we forget this as techies. We tend to focus on restoring, all of our tech first, but think of it in terms of business priorities. So make sure that you're restoring your main service lines before, moving on to the nice little utility things that you have running in the background. At this point, make sure that you document all of your recovery activities. If you do find that something's gone wrong during the recovery phase, having all of the steps that you've taken documented really helps to go back and unpick where that might have gone wrong, and that definitely will make your recovery more efficient. And the big one, make sure that you take this as an opportunity to learn. Are there any processes that you could have improved? Are there any security controls that were missing? So, for example, the first thing that the business I worked at did was we went and we implemented MFA across our whole estate. Use this as an opportunity to get a third-party evaluation done of your suppliers. So you may think that actually your IT provider is absolutely amazing. You think that your contract covers everything. But during a cyber incident, that's when you find out who your good suppliers are. So those that step up and help and go the extra mile for you, they're the ones that you keep hold of. The ones that kind of say, oh, well, it's not our fault, we didn't do it. I would use that as an opportunity to review who's actually delivering value to the business. Use it as an opportunity for staff training. I can tell you from personal experience that there was never a more attentive room than the staff that were involved in that cyber incident. So it's a great time because you've got a captive audience of people who don't want to go through that again. And you've got a real-life situation where you can say, you know, this isn't something I'm telling you that may happen at one point in the future. This has just happened. So that's probably your prime time for engaging staff in training. It's also a real-world test of your disaster recovery and business continuity plans. Did they work? Were there any snags? Can we change those to make them better next time? So the business continuity plan that we had in place at the time was to go across the road out of our office to the local pub, where we could go upstairs, and obviously they had refreshments, but they also had a nice little secure room where we could go and work from. We then discovered that actually one of our key services relied on our static IP address, and we couldn't access it at all. So our business continuity plan didn't work. We hadn't tested it. So it's really important to use this as a real-world review. And I come back again to my key message. Good communication and the right communication during a disaster recovery situation or a cyber attack actually makes a difference between protecting your reputation, keeping the doors open, or doing what was on the last presentation and dying within 2 years. So I've seen really good examples of open communication where big major law firm have said, they've gone very public and said, this is what happened. They told the personal stories of the staff that were involved. So this is how we all felt. This is how we dealt with it. And actually, I think that did a lot for their reputation in providing their clients with assurance that they'd learned from their mistakes. They were honest, they were transparent, they managed to reduce their, loss of reputation to a minimum by being open. I've seen another example. Anybody who's familiar with the legal sector will know there was quite a significant attack last year on a major IT provider. And we saw the opposite happen. So they had their customers all over social media saying, we've heard nothing, we know nothing, our clients are sat in vans waiting to move house and we don't know what's going on, we don't know what to tell them. And actually the damage that was caused by that, just through lack of communication and transparency, was huge. Really big one for me is that make sure after the event you thank your staff and your suppliers that have helped. I know that, when you need them, your good staff will put in extra hours. I think our IT teams had worked kind of 60 hours across, a few days in helping us to recover from this attack. So make sure that you let those people know that you value what they did. I think it's really important to allow them to take some kind of time to recover afterwards, because I know for me it was certainly the most stressful experience that I ever went through as an employee. Make sure at the end you do a well-crafted formal report. So at the point where you're confident that everything's resolved and that you've put in your additional controls, be transparent about what happened. And say, I'm on time today. So thank you very much for listening, guys. Upstairs, we have our stand. We've got our consultants on the stand. We don't overly bring salespeople to events. So if you've got any questions around incident response or how we can test those plans, do come and ask us. But thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Jen.